Welcome. We are here today with Whitney Elkins-Hutton, who joins us to talk about how to build and maintain generational wealth. Whitney's going to be sharing her story of how she teaches her 11-year-old daughter everything from budgeting off of the money that she makes from household chores, how she teaches her daughter about assets and liabilities and why she might not want to buy that Barbie at Target. She's also going to be talking about some of the risks that we face, including healthcare risks, which are often not talked about enough. And she's going to be talking about various frameworks for understanding how to protect, preserve, and grow our wealth for the benefit not just of ourselves, but for our children, for our grandchildren. So welcome, Whitney.
Thank you so much for having me on, Paula.
Of course, thank you for joining our YouTube channel. Whitney, there's a Chinese proverb that wealth only lasts for 3 generations. Why? What happens to
A
it?
lot of investors I work with, they're so focused on creating wealth and growing it that they forget to understand those principles in order to keep it and then be able to pass it on efficiently to the next generation and train the next generation to do the same thing that they did in order to create the wealth.
Right. Well, and so the proverb is that wealth lasts for 3 generations because the first builds it, the second maintains it, the third squanders it, and then the fourth begins the cycle again.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that, the reason why that cycle even exists is because the lack of skills built generation to generation to be able to steward that wealth forward.
Right. And so what we're going to talk about in today's interview then is what are some of those skills? So let's dive right in. If you are thinking about building generational wealth, you want your children and more importantly, your grandchildren to maintain and build upon the legacy that you've left. What are, at the risk of a very broad question, what are some of the key points that the key most important things that you need to make sure that you pass on when it comes to your knowledge?
Well, so it really, I equate wealth to kind of like a board game. So if you're learning how to play Monopoly or in our family, Catan or Seven Wonders, first you have to understand the objective. And so,
Mhm.
really you have to bestow that objective on not only yourself on why you're creating wealth, but also educate your family on why you're creating this. Is it to have vacations at a whim, or is it to do something, with a higher impact in the world, right? So what's the objective of creating the wealth? And then you have to understand the rules of the game. How do you create it? How do you keep it? How do you grow it? How do you pass it on? Those are kind of what the 4 buckets that the rules, when it comes to creating wealth fall into. And then everything else after that is learning the strategies in each of those buckets. So like if you're learning a game, Monopoly, you want to be able to essentially knock your competitors off the board. What are the rules? Like you have to be able to go around, the board, pass go. You have to be able to, keep money flowing into your account, more money flowing into your account than out of your account, right? But then the strategies on how to win that board game is to get as many like houses and hotels on each of the properties in order to win the game. That's kind of the same thing that we're trying to do in generational wealth. Understand the objective, the rules, and then the strategies. Then everything else past that becomes a tactic. And this is where I think a lot of people really get starry-eyed when they are investing in the stock market or start investing in real estate. They want to know the best ticker to go into, or how is the best way to organize their estate, or what do I go into short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. Those are tactics. We have to back it up and really understand the objective, the rules, and the strategies first.
Mm. And so do you think that people sometimes go off course because the strategies that they employ don't align with the goals or the objectives that they have? And if so, can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, I mean, they just don't understand why short-term rentals are working in a particular market versus long-term rentals, right? So,
Mhm.
so that would be one example. They just don't understand why. They see somebody else doing it, so they copy what somebody else is saying that is a good investment strategy. We need to back it up, and this is what in the book Money for Tomorrow, that this particular section on learning how to grow wealth, I call the 7 principles of conservative investing. So if you're looking at a particular investment, we want to make sure that we understand, number one, how does it preserve capital? Um, don't get knocked out of the game. You don't want to lose your money. Don't lose your initial investment. So you want to make sure that investment preserves the capital. How does it create cash flow? Kind of like what you would do in Monopoly. You want to be able to create cash flow either from your properties or being able to go around the board as many times as possible. How does it create equity growth for yourself? Okay. And there's different types of equity we can tap into: forced appreciation, market appreciation, and then also what you can get from pay down of debt, that type of equity. How does it uh, bestow tax benefits? That is something, especially for a lot of listeners here are probably very attuned to real estate. We get very starry-eyed about the tax benefits of real estate. But there's other ways that we can tap into tax benefits through ownership of businesses, and how, just more importantly, how that allows us to create velocity with our money in order to continue to grow our portfolio. And then we also look at, like, how do we leverage good quality debt? How do we leverage assets that hedge inflation, especially, true in today's market in the past 12 to 24 months? We want to make sure that we're investing in assets that are going to at least be match inflation, if not yield us a return in multiples above inflation. So our dollar isn't being devalued. And then lastly, how can you invest with experts? Now, either you need to be the expert in whatever investment you're going into, or you need to be able to identify and vet an expert to invest with.
So at the very high level, you've covered quite a lot, right? And really a separate video could be dedicated to each one of those points. Like, for example, how to identify and vet an expert, knowing how to identify talent, right? Which is the art of knowing judgment, is really a skill that takes quite a long time to develop, right? Given that we have this high level overview established, where would a person start? The average person who's watching this right now, who has a 401k, an IRA, maybe one or two rental properties, right? They have two kids, ages 12 and 9, and they want to make sure that their kids know how to manage money and know how to protect generational wealth. What's their next step? Where do they begin?
Again, we would want to dive deeper into their situation and fully understand what it is they want. Okay, with growing their wealth, why they want that, what kind of freedom are they trying to unlock? A financial freedom, a choice freedom, a time freedom, maybe even creating more impact into the world. And then who do they have to become in order to get that freedom? And I can bring this back into my own life. I started off investing in 2002 in real estate completely by accident. Honestly, I bought a house with a significant other, and about a month later, the relationship fell apart. And here I had the house. And initially I thought this house was going to sink me. I stuffed it full of roommates. My friends helped me, through payment of beer, pizza and sushi, helped me rehab the house. And then 11 months later, I sold it. And I was like, at the end of the 11 months, I was like, whoo, okay, I got that, off my plate, that this house isn't going to sink me. I start doing my taxes and I'm like, oh, wait a second. I made a lot of money doing that. I had unhooked how I created value in the world from my time. And not only that, I eliminated my housing expense over the course of that 11 months. And that's where I kind of went, ding, ding, ding. All right, I know how to create, at least equity in my world. I didn't have the knowledge around cash flow at that particular time. Now, the reason why I would kind of start here is because at that point in time, I didn't have the time to continue to do large fix and flipping projects. So I used my primary residence as the opportunity for me to continue to, through bringing in roommates, lower my housing expenses, and as well as using what we call the 121 exclusion, which is kind of like 1031 exchange, but for, common folk, on to keep a lot of those gains that I was producing in my home property rehabs tax-free. Now, I start there because those are simple things on how to leverage the roof over my head to start building generational wealth. Now, as I grew through my investing career, I, had a full-time job. My husband has a full-time job. We had a baby girl. We're taking care of other family members. My time starts becoming very limited. So now I had to think about, okay, now I can't exactly, for me, it wasn't feasible to continue to do these rehab projects. How do I level up my game to the next level of investing? And so we started off into single family rentals, then scaled up into multifamily, projects, and then eventually started raising money for syndications. And you really have to kind of start back and understand what it is you want, why do you want, and who do you have to become to get it. And for some people, it might just be they invest in the stock market. So then you have to understand, okay, what kind of returns do you want to generate in the stock market? What kind of freedoms in your life are you going to try to achieve by investing in the stock market? And then who do you have to become the best stock market investor possible? You would start there. Now, how do we teach the next generation to do that? That's, again, we can answer that question. That's, bringing them along on the journey, help educating them. For what we do with our daughter, she sits down at the table with us. She's 11 years old. She hears the conversations my husband and I are having around money. We don't make it a taboo subject in our household. We teach through games. We teach through card building games, Monopoly. We read books together, like Richest Man in Babylon. She actually, did a lot of, reading and editing on my book as well. So, she was practicing her spelling and stuff like that. And then, we're going to continue to level up through money games, teaching her through value-based economy. We have a value-based economy in our household. And so we're allowing her to make money judgment calls, not only with how she spends her money, but how she invests her money at this age.
Tell me about the value-based economy.
Yeah. So we have a kind of like a spreadsheet. We've since made this electronic, using an app with, we use Gravy Stack. We've also used Till. That's another tool that, parents can use. But, so there is just a certain standard that we have in our house, like making the bed, brushing her teeth, taking out the trash. Those are things that she's either should be doing for herself. We call it executive ordering, or that she just does to create value within the family. Okay, that's part of being a family unit. Okay, so she doesn't really get paid for those. She might get $5 a week if she gets it all done. But then past that, we have identified chores around the house, that kind of a menu of chores, and each chore has a different dollar amount attached to it. And she gets to check off. There's certain expectations. If there's 15 chores for the week, we ask her to do 10. She can go through and she can pick out the ones that, she is most interested in, but they're also weighted by how much value they are in, for creating, value in our house. A few weeks ago, we were doing spring cleaning, and so she got paid $3 a window. That's essentially what I would pay somebody else. And she was so excited to do that because she's looking at all the chores, and she honed in on that. She was like, I want to clean the windows. And I'm like, well, it's not just cleaning the windows. They have to be done well. So we showed her what it, means to do the job well. And, she asked for a little bit of support, initially to make sure that she understood the project, and then away she went. She also creates value in our camper van business. We rent out a camper van. And so, she does a lot of cleaning for that as well. And so really what we're trying to do is help her understand that some things she just has to do to take care of herself, some things she has to do to be part of a group or a family unit or a community. And then there's other things that are more weighted, that actually drive value within a household or drive value within a business.
First of all, to go through, you have, what are your numbers of doors? It's a huge number.
Yeah. So you're either in active or limited partnerships. We have 2,200 multifamily units. Actually, sorry, 6,500 multifamily units, 2,200 self-storage units. And then we've flipped over a few million in real estate.
Jeez. Okay. 6,500 multifamily units and 2,200 self-storage units?
Yes.
Wow. How well does she understand the scale and the scope of that? Like, how do you talk to her about that?
She gets it at a very 30,000 foot view level. We're blessed that 3 of the projects that we're invested in partnership are in Colorado Springs, just a couple hours away from us. So, when we travel through that area, we stop by the properties. And so she gets to see them, and she's seen kind of the evolution of these properties over the past 4 years. Also, we have short-term rentals. We have a couple of midterm rentals as well. Also, our camper van business. And so she's seen all of these businesses. We take her in, when we go to Arkansas with our short-term rental, like, she's going to the property with us and helping us, do some of the gardening on the property, just quick little cleanups and stuff like that. So she sees it. I think she doesn't, she could still use kind of a reality check on how much work it is, but we're getting there. She's 11.
What you've talked about earlier with, in terms of the chore chart, that sort of seems like a day-by-day budgeting and cash flow teaching tool for building generational wealth. But then when it comes to understanding the scope of all of the investment properties, right, and the balance sheet generally, that's a different discussion that then needs to be age appropriate. Now, in your case, your daughter is 11, so that's kind of a transitional age. You're no longer talking to her about money the way you would when she was 5 or 6, but she's not quite at that level of 18 or 19. Can you walk us through, in terms of helping a child understand a balance sheet? At what age do you start really impressing those lessons?
I've seen so many different models out there. For us, I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you our journey. We started playing cash flow for kids with her probably when she was like about 3 years old. And I think the game actually is set up to be played at age 4 or 5 or older. I was like, if she just understands 2 words, asset and liability, I've won. I've won the game, right? So, and I always get, a mean email or two when I say this, but it kept us from buying a lot of Barbies every time we went to Target, because we would be like, is that an asset or liability? And she'd be like, oh, it's a liability. But she understood gift giving, and she, now that she has her own money, she went out and bought a burrito blanket. Yes, a burrito blanket does exist, guys. Anyways, she does have choices with her money, and but anyway, so that was probably about age 3 to 5. And then at about age 7, 6, 7, we started reading books with her, like Richest Man in Babylon. And, what's really great about that book, even though it's kind of old English, it's a parable. It comes from a story perspective. And I think that's a really great avenue to teach kids about money, is from a story perspective. And just having them just demystifying that money is a taboo subject, that it can be talked about in a very tactful way, making sure that they feel comfortable, discussing money openly in a household. Then in about age 8 and 9, we started her having a look at all of our subscriptions across the household. And this was the task that we put her up to, because I wanted to itemize every single subscription that we had, New York Times subscription, all different things, Audible subscription. And it was really interesting. Now she has to use spreadsheets. She has to, be able to look at, income statements, our expense statements, to identify all the subscriptions. Now she has to start lining up money and making judgments based on not only how much does the subscription cost, but what impact that has for our life. Now, I have some subscriptions that are set up with my personal business at Ash Wealth, and she just wanted to axe those off the board. She was like, we're spending too much money here. Like, get this gone. I'm like, no, hold on. Those are productive. Those, I put $1 into those subscriptions. I get more than $1 out in my business. So we had those type of conversations. What's a consumptive or lifestyle expense? What's a productive expense? And what's a protective expense? The conversation that we're having now, that she's age 11, is understanding, credit. What does it mean to be able to, take on debt for different types of investments? And how debt isn't necessarily a dirty word. It's not a 4-letter word. It can be for some people. But, how can we use debt appropriately in order to create cash flow or equity in our lives? So we're starting to have those type of conversations. I will say, I'm always the type of person that I'll introduce probably a concept that's like 3 steps ahead of her. And if she doesn't get it, then I'll have to kind of put a pin in that conversation and come back to it like the next year. I remember her being 6 years old, and I tried to explain to her how some people get in trouble with credit cards. Just totally sailed right over her head. And I was like, okay, we're going to have the credit conversation here in a couple of years, whenever you fully understand.
Right. Well, and I want to highlight that the framework that you just laid out, the expenses fall into three categories: consumptive, productive, and protective. Right. That's a good expense framework that I have never heard anyone so clearly articulate.
Yeah, and actually,
So,
there's a fourth category there that would be destructive. And this is a framework that I learned from my
mm,
mentor, years ago. When you look at your expenses, there's how do we bucket them? Okay, how do we kind of give them a job or not, or identify what their job is in our life? And then also, how can we align them to our values? So first, take all your expenses and categorize them. Are they destructive? Are they just credit card fees, alcohol, shopping, drug abuse, stuff like that? Those things that we just need to get out of our life. And then look at what's helping you protect your wealth. Like maybe you have a lawyer on retainer, or you meet with your lawyer annually. You have a CPA that helps you file your taxes, and that helps you lower your tax liability. Your insurances, those would be considered protective and productive expenses. Well, protective expenses, and then productive expenses are things that you spend $1 and you get more than $1 out. Things that help you amplify your business or create velocity with your money. And then
mm,
everything else kind of falls in the lifestyle category. And I think that's the category that most people just don't know what to do with. They're like, okay, great. It's lifestyle. Do I strip it down as far as I can, get rid of the lattes, reduce my grocery bills, stop eating out? That's where I really kind of lead my coaching clients through a process of value-based spending. What are those things? And we do this exercise separately, but I have them create 3 columns and just think through of all those things, those experiences they want to have in their life.
mm,
Simple things, like a little potluck with the neighbors on Easter. That's the holiday we're coming off of right now. Or, do you go to the dinner theater locally in town? Little experiences that will light up your life. But then also think, things that you want to maybe visit in your state or nationally or internationally, right? The world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want. You can put whatever you want on that list. But I encourage people to think small and big. The next column is, how do you want to grow, right? Because as humans, we love to progress. We love growth. Most people find value there. So is there a book you want to read? Is there a skill that you want to learn? A language you want to learn? For me, I have a whole list of cooking things that I want to learn how to cook, right? Because I'm
mm.
so tired of overpaying for them at the grocery store. I want to learn how to cook. And then the third column is, how do we want to give back? And we can give back with our time, our knowledge, and then, of course, our money. And so, and I encourage people, don't sell yourself short. Like if you have kids at home, or if you're teaching in any sort of capacity or training in any sort of capacity, that is giving back. Make sure that you identify all the different ways you're giving back to your family, to your community, to your loved ones. List it out in that category. Okay, now once you have those 3 buckets, now we take a look at those lifestyle expenses, the ones we didn't know exactly what to do with it. We want to reduce or eliminate anything that doesn't help you meet one of those experiences, create some of that growth, or helps you contribute.
What are some of the things that you want to cook?
Oh, well, I learned how to make homemade jerky recently.
Uh huh.
Roasted chickpeas and roasted edamame. And
Hmm.
then I just taught myself this past weekend on how to make yogurt.
Oh, my mom makes great yogurt. Yeah. Homemade yogurt is the best.
It is. And, for me, I was just really tired of overpaying at the grocery store. Some of these things are really simple to make at home, but also we're on a mission to eliminate as many preservatives out of our diet as possible. And those are, some key areas that we were identifying that had a lot of just kind of junk, and we didn't
Right.
need.
Yeah. I make my own hummus for exactly the same reason.
Ooh,
Right.
I'm gonna have to get that
But
recipe. That sounds yummy. I will say the one that has been the biggest money saver for us is my family. We are constantly hiking, running, playing outdoors, and my family loves electrolyte powders. And it just boggled my mind how expensive they are. And we were probably, a canister of Ultima
mhm.
replenisher, I think was like $45 for 90 servings. I could make the similar electrolyte powder for about 1/12 the cost. Like,
Mm.
so you just have to kind of think outside of the box.
We touched a little bit on protection, right? Can you talk a little bit about what a person who's listening to this ought to do in order to protect their assets for the next generation?
So protection can come in a couple of different flavors. One, what do you do now? And then two, how do you set up systems for later? In the book we call in the four horsemen, and there's actually two other ones that would kind of pepper on top. And I think they're probably pretty familiar with the audience, but I'll go ahead and touch on them. One is, how do you reduce the interest that you pay in your portfolio? I believe Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman have frameworks in place for eliminating debt that are very beneficial to some people. But when you look at it from a mathematical perspective, it may not actually be the most advantageous mathematically. Okay. Meaning you're not getting the best bang for your buck whenever you just eliminate all debt, either do a debt snowball or a debt avalanche. If you are somebody who can handle debt very well, think about utilizing a strategy that actually orders your debt in a certain way to where you're getting the best leverage for the dollar. So a lot of my consumer debt I want to get rid of because I'm actually going to get a 14, 15, 16% yield, maybe even higher. I have a loan on our camper trailer that we just bought a few months ago. As I pay down the loan, now it's accelerating. If I pay it off, I get a 40% return on that dollar. But other debt, like the debt on my house, I don't want to pay off. I don't want to throw extra money at it because if I did, I might be getting a 4% return on my money. I can keep that money in the bank right now and make better return on it. So looking at interest, how do we leverage that? Fees, how do we eliminate as many fees out of our portfolio? Banking fees, ATM fees, credit and lending fees, retirement fees. I know you've had a lot of discussions on how to reduce retirement fees out of your portfolio. Leveraging insurance in order to outsource your liability. That is an immense way of, protecting your wealth. We had what we call an urban fire, inland fire here about 2 years ago. And in 3 or 4 hours in Boulder County, eliminated 1,100 homes and impacted so many businesses. Most families were 30 to 40% underinsured on their home. So now they have to come up with $100K, $200K to rebuild the same property. So making sure that you have the appropriate amount of insurance. And then taxation. How can we reduce our tax liability? By investing in businesses, by investing in, real estate. How can we leverage depreciation? It's making sure you're using entities appropriately, leveraging other people's tax brackets. Like for me, in my businesses, if I hire my daughter, I can pay my daughter. And up into, I think it's now $13,500, she pays zero taxes. So I get to write it off as a business expense. She gets to have an income. Now she can take part of that money and invest it in a Roth IRA. Goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, comes out tax-free. And then the other part she can actually use to pay off some of her own bills. Some of the, a camp she wants to go to. She wants to go to space camp this summer. She can use that money, to pay for that. So that's hugely impactful. An added way to protect your money is if you plan on retiring with more than $500,000 in your retirement account, you're going to want to talk to an accountant about 5 to 10 years out from retirement and make sure you're having this conversation around provisional income and how it might impact your portfolio. And that, we hear a lot about doing Roth conversions. And this is why is that we want to make sure that we are setting up our portfolio to where we don't have a huge amount of income that's going to trigger what we call provisional income and cause a potential double taxation on things like Social Security.
What is provisional income?
So a Roth IRA, income that you draw off of cash flow life insurance.
Right.
And then your distribution, your required minimum distribution on your IRA up to your standard deduction. Those are the only 3 things that do not trigger provisional income. Any other income that goes above that to a certain amount, there's certain thresholds, say like a $20,000 threshold. And I think if you have like another $44,000 on top of that, Anything above that now is going to start triggering some sort of taxation on your Social Security. And when you hit that 44,000, I think right now in 2020, for 2023, it was like 44,900. That now triggers an 85% taxation on your Social Security. So another way to think about that is if you and your spouse were going to retire on more than $80,000 a year being withdrawn out of your IRAs, your Social Security, that streaming income you might have been accounting on, is going to have some sort of taxation on it, and perhaps a very steep taxation.
That's a very steep tax. Yeah.
Yes. And a lot of people are accounting on that. Like they're like, oh great, I get 80,000 from this and I get a pension. And then, oh, by the way, I get like another, 20, 30 grand from Social Security. I'm going to be living large on 100 plus. Maybe not the case. You want to make sure that you're doing things, organizing your estate about 5 to 10 years out to make sure that you're not going to be paying that double tax there at the end. Unfortunately, retirement accounts are great at growing wealth, but you also compound your taxes at the same time, potentially.
Right.
And then the last thing that I love talking about, putting on people's radar as a way to protect your wealth, is making sure you've planned for your incapacity. And I don't mean having a will or a trust. Okay. I don't mean those things. I mean, making sure you have a living will, your healthcare directives, your power of attorneys, because you just don't know when something's going to happen in your life. That slip, trip, or fall, maybe heaven forbid you have a heart attack, what's going to take you offline for a few days or a few weeks or a few months, because you want to make sure that you have a plan now. That way, your family is not impacted, or potentially your health drains your wealth.
Well, thank you. We're reaching the end of our time. Are there any final points that you want to emphasize?
Creating generational wealth, again, has to be thought of as a methodical plan to follow. And, all this education is out there. And it's not the problem of the information not being available, is that it's not, for most people, in a simple to follow blueprint to where it actually taps into what we call financial capability. And so that's one of the reasons why I was so drawn to writing this book, Money for Tomorrow. I wrote it for my daughter, so she had a blueprint to follow. You want to talk about generational wealth? I wanted her to know, like, if I blew it all, I wanted her to know how to start over. And this was just something I felt super compelled to share with the world.
Oh, that's excellent. So where can people, thank you for spending this time with us. Where can people find you? Where can they find the book? Where can they find out more?
Yes, you can find me at ashwealth.com, ashwealth.com. You can also find the book on biggerpockets.com, Money for Tomorrow. You can also find it on Amazon as well.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.